فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب.
الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. And so today I want to talk about something that I've been asked many times over about, and it's something that I think is very important, specifically for the students that are looking to come here to Egypt and to study in Azhar, as well as in general as tips and tricks for someone who's wanting to learn about the Deen, whether they're coming to Egypt or whether they're trying to get started, and also for those that are looking to how to get started in studying Arabic. And so all three of these things I'm going to cover, inshallah, and I'll have I'll talk a little bit more about Arabic in this particular video, because this is one of the first things when someone is looking to get started up and going to the Azhar. They need to understand that before they get started in the door, this is a place that's in Arabic. So if they don't know Arabic, then first off, they're not going to be able to get into it until they know Arabic. So this is important that somebody knows. And while there's a ma'had, like a school that teaches Arabic, that is specific for the people, the foreigners, when they come to study in Azhar, the first thing that someone will do is they'll go to the place. It's called Burke Al-Islamiyya, and they'll go to this Medina to Burke, and this is a connection to Azhar, and this is where they'll go and they'll get their paperwork in there, and they got to run through some things. They got to go to the hospital, get their blood work done, and get checked out a little bit. And then when they get their work done, the first thing that they'll be put into is they'll be put into dirasat khasa. And so this dirasat khasa is to make sure that this person knows Arabic. Before getting to this point, you would have already wanted to study Arabic, because the people that come into this point, they have like classes in this place, but Azhar is a school that is like the education is free. So you also have to take into consideration that the quality of education that you're going to get is according to what they're able to give. And while there's much benefit of going to Azhar, there's a lot of deficiency when it comes to a student that's trying to learn, like whether they're trying to learn Arabic, whether they're trying to learn tafsir or hadith or fiqh and all these different things. They need to come with this outside of Azhar, and Azhar will definitely help them. And at the end of the day, they'll get a shahada. They'll get a diploma for Azhar University, inshallah. But when they're coming in, they need to have already known these things, and then Azhar will be a chance where they can actually test their knowledge and actually put that knowledge to the test. Did I actually learn it or not? And this is also one of the things that is one of the best ways to solidify information, is to get it tested. So if you test your information, then this, like that recall, when you have it tested, when you have like the information that you've learned tested, this is a great thing. But if you start up and you go, as soon as you come to Egypt, you barely know any Arabic, and you go straight into dirasat khasa, you'll be wasting a lot of time. And so what a lot of the brothers have recommended is that people, before they get into this this step of going into Azhar right away, the first thing that they would do is they would try to get through a whole program of Arabic, such as Bani Yadik. So if you can get through all of Bani Yadik, which is if you're with a teacher, whether you go to one of the language schools, there's many language schools here. Inshallah, in this video I won't necessarily talk about that. Or you can also get a private teacher to go through the Bani Yadik manhaj curriculum with you guys. And this is a good step, like a first step, because you need to be able to write when you come in here. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to understand when Arabic is being spoken to you. You also need to be able to talk and hold a conversation, whether it's a small conversation or some type of conversation in Arabic. Even if you make mistakes in like Arab, this is not the biggest deal. The important thing is that you can talk and you can understand and go back and forth, as well as you need to be able to write. So you need to be able to put down your thoughts in written form. So if you're asked about something, you need to be able to write that. And you also need to understand Arab, like at least you need to know like fi'l, marfu', and you also need to know like how can I like to the basic things of reading, as well as sarf. And you also like these are like the basic things. So when someone is wanting to go into Azhar, if they haven't done these first things, they're going to get into dirasat khas, and then they will probably have to stay there for a while. And then when they want to go from dirasat khas to I'dadi, which is like the middle school, they will take a test to get placed in I'dadi. When they take the first test to come into Durasa Khasa, all it is Arabic. The Durasa Khasa is just about Arabic. They're trying to see, do you know Arabic? Can you actually, like, if we start talking to you, do you understand what we're saying? If we give you a book that's in Arabic, can you understand this? You know, so this is like the first step. So what's recommended is that people already do this outside. So whether they go to a markaz, or whether they get a private teacher, or what's even better for some people is that they get a small group and they get a private teacher with a small group that goes pretty intense with them, like get to teach them the Benia Dake series. This is something that is good for beginners. Of course, it's not enough. Like, no one should think that there's a curriculum out there that will give them what they need, you know. And if they just they plug away at this manhaj, or like this curriculum, they're gonna do it, you know. And at the end of it, they know what they need to know. Like, this is something that there's no real way to assure that somebody knows something, except that you get thrown into a bunch of different scenarios and that you like survive. And also, like, Arabic is something that is like, it's swimming. It's like swimming when you get into a classroom, or you get a book and you have to read, and then you're like that. There's going to be a sense of swimming. So at the beginning, yeah, you're going to want to write down different, like, you'll write the word in English right next to the other word that you don't know. And like, there's a new word, you like highlight that new word and you write down the little English translation right next to it. But eventually you'll see that this is actually going to slow people down. So like, at the very baby steps, just so that you have some type of way of going through a book. Of course, this is something that that's like, it's understandable. But at a certain point, you're going to want to switch that English word to an Arabic word. That also means that you already know that word. So then when you have that word and this word right next to each other, it like puts that together. So this is one thing. So going to focus more on Arabic. So when someone gets started with like the Bania Dake series, what they're going to first do is they're going to start opening up the Bania Dake series, and they're not actually trying to teach you Nahu. They're not trying to teach you Sarf. They're just trying to get you to read, and also to get you to memorize some of the phrases that are important for you to know to talk and hold a conversation with someone. Because of course the idea of it is, if you can hold a conversation, then I can teach you. And if I teach you in Arabic, it's much better than if I teach you in English, because if I teach you in English, you're going to be translating, and translating takes up a lot of time and it takes up a lot of brain power. And that brain power, if you were to able to hold a conversation in English without translate, or like hold up a conversation in Arabic without translating in English, that whole time you'll be a lot faster. Even if you don't understand everything, or you're not able to say everything, that's not a problem at first. You just kind of will go out there. So as I gave the allegory that this is kind of like swimming. So when you first get in there and you're in an Arabic environment, you will have a sense that maybe you get thrown out into deep water, and you're out there and you're just trying to figure it out. You don't know where the words are. You don't know what this word means. You don't know what that word means. But this is something that after a while, and you practice and whatnot, you'll actually get a feel for it and a hang for it. And then you'll be able to do much more in that. And of course, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to like drown and die. You're just going to feel lost. You know, that's it. And so, but this is something that, of course, when someone first starts, they'll start off with like the Bania Dake books. When they get to about Bania Dake, the book 2 or 3, then at this point they would want to have started Ajurumiyah, and another like small book, whether it's a mutun or whether it's like a book with a bunch of like tadribat, like, and like practicing with sarf and nahu. So because you need to learn nahu, because of course, like the Bania Dake books, they will throw nahu in the middle of like you'll have like a wahda, and like the wahda will be like a section, and then it'll have like, so this is about family, al-usra. And so then in that section, you'll just be reading that, and you'll memorize some of the new words, and you'll go on to the next part. And then eventually you'll have like bigger conversations, and then they'll put like just one section of nahu in the middle of that. And that section in nahu is good, but of course, like, to put all of this in a single book of nahu is like the important thing. So when someone is looking to study nahu in particular, the first thing that they'll want to do is they'll want to learn Ajrumiyah. Whether you learn it in English or Arabic from the first time through, just to get the basic concept of what's what. This is sometimes like I learned it in English first, and there's courses that are out there to learn it in English. Abdurrahman Hassan, he has a course in this in English, and I took this course, and it was helpful at the beginning just so I have a feel of it, as well as there was another brother, Abdullah Shiri, that I worked with him at the beginning to get this in English, and this was something that helped me out just to get the feel of it, you know, so I can understand the basic concepts in English, and then then later when I go like straight into it in Arabic, I actually don't feel completely lost because I've already heard the concept before in English. So then when it comes to me in Arabic, then I can like fix it, make sure it's actually really tight and understood. And so when somebody goes and they learn Ajurumiyah, there's a way that they should do it, which is they should understand that when there's a matan and then there's a sharh. These two are very important. One, the matan is a very good teaching tool as well as a review tool. So when you're wanting to review something very quickly in a shortened period of time, you have the matan. And as a teacher, like if someone is wanting to teach you a lot of concepts, it's easier for them to teach you a matan because it doesn't have all the details and the reasons and whys and all the examples and whatnot. It'll just give you something very simple. And so you can learn from this matan. And then you also have a sharh that will be the go-to sharh for this, whatever this matan is. And so this is something such as Ajrumiyah. You have Tuhfatu Saniyah. And this is like the go-to sharh that is for Muhammad Muhyiddin Abdul Hamid. And so this is the one that is the go-to. And so when you learn it, say you learn the first time you go through Ajrumiyah, and if you go through it a couple times, there's no problem with going through it a couple times. If you go through it quickly in English, like just going through the matan, and then after that you go through it with the sharh in Arabic, this is something that's very good for you, and you should always practice. And the biggest thing, whenever you learn something in Nahu, is that you always take this back to what you're reading in the Quran. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of a student memorizing Quran, as well as if the memorizing is very, very like time, like taking a lot of time, then to at least like keep reading and whatever he's memorizing, keep going over it and thinking about whatever he learned in that class. How do I bring that back to what I've learned in the Quran? And like this is one of the biggest things that's going to be a huge help. And also when someone is when someone is learning like within this way, of course they're going to want to understand like the meanings of the main bulk of the words in the Quran. And this is something, there's an app that's called Quranic, and this is a very useful app for someone to learn the main words that reoccur in the Quran a lot. And so someone can go over this because it's a flashcard based app, as well as it has like a bunch of like tools that are easy for someone to use in like maybe 5 minutes. They can accomplish a little lesson, and then you can go to the next lesson, go to the next lesson, and then they'll have a set of flashcards that will give them the words in Arabic. This is something that's very helpful. That was helpful for me before even coming to Egypt. I went over and I would use this so that the main words of the Quran, I could actually follow the words, even if I don't understand exactly how it all fit together. This was something that was very helpful too. But so when someone is studying Ajrumiyah, they get Tuhfatu Saniyah, and then they will go through this book and they make sure that they really understand it. After this book, there's a couple different, and of course going with it with the teacher. After this book, there are a couple different ways someone can go, and I've heard like a very famous sheikh that said after you finish Ajrumiyah, then go straight into Sharh straight into Sharh Alfiyah. Like going it straight from Ajrumiyah to Alfiyah, this is a huge jump. And I tried it. Like I started reading the Sharh Ibn Aqil, and I got to the Bab al-Ibtida, and then I was going there, and there's like then I came to like the Jumla Ismiya Sadd Musadd al-Khabar, and I was like what's this? I was totally lost, and I got really, really lost and frustrated. So I kind of jumped back, and I was like, okay, maybe I went a little too fast and far from my own benefit. So I went back, and then the next book that I like found a lot of benefit from, there's two different ways I went about it. Of course, like if you have a teacher that has a book in mind, go with that. And even if there is like a good book out there, but your teacher has this book and he says this is a good book for your stage, and he says this is the book you should study it with him. And learn from that. And this is like the more important thing. So like my teacher, he had a book that is it's called Tibyan, which is it's like a book that's written by a scholar that is nearby where I was at the time. So it's not a well-known book. And if you guys want a link for it and whatnot, I can send you a link to the book, but it's not very well known. But it is a good book because it has a lot of tajribat, and it also has a lot of benefits that you wouldn't necessarily find in another book. And it's not a book that is like a matan and a sharh on a matan. It's like all one book, and it also gives you like verses from the Quran that you can take and you can make i'rab of it, and it'll give you like the i'rab, and so you can like practice with that. And so this was a very good book for me as well. So this book its level is a little over Ajrumiyah and like the sharh, but it's also like a little under Tankih al-Azhariya. And this is the next book that I would recommend for someone if they were to go from after doing Ajurumiyya and doing it with Tuhfat al-Suniyya, then taking Tankih al-Azhariya. And this is a very good book that is like if you can get through it with a teacher, this is the best thing. Like I started it with a teacher, and then like the teacher, I wasn't able to finish it with him. And something that I recommend just for in general, when you guys are studying with a teacher, sometimes the teachers, either you'll find that this teacher maybe isn't like the most suitable teacher for you, or you'll find that maybe you're in a class with other people and then that person left and the teacher is busy. Don't base your studies on your teacher's availability. This is something that I've seen with some people. They say, I started up Mutimim al-Ajurumiyya. I've started up this book, and then like my teacher got busy and I stopped with him, and they haven't done anything since they started up and quit that book. Like it's been like maybe 6, 7 months, 8, 9 months, and they haven't done anything since the time that they were with them. A lot of times when people get started with a book, they'll get excited and they go with it with their teacher, but they should have read this book for themselves and tried to understand the book for themselves before even going into it with the teacher. So like with this book, Tankih al-Azhariya, going back to that book that I highly recommend. So I went through and I read this book by myself, and when I finished it, I felt like I accomplished something. And of course, when you finish a book, you should never think that I finished like reading the book, and so like I'm done with it, and so you like throw it away and you can like go sell it or something like that. No. Like this is something that book is a go-to, and when you have studied a little farther down, you should go back to that book and read it through. And like the first time you read a book, it'll be like a little hard, and you'll feel like you're dragging through, like trying to understand. But when you come back to it a second time or a third time and read it again, you're like, oh, this is much easier, and it really like solidifies the information. So you should have like kind of a weird or like a regular routine where you go back and you read what you've already learned. And so after Tankih al-Azhariya, there's a lot of things that are in Tankih al-Azhariya you won't actually find in Qatr al-Nada. And this is one of the things that Qatr al-Nada, there's some things in it that are missing, and it also is actually very advanced in some ways. Such as some of the times they'll talk about huruf and whatnot, and some of the things you need a teacher for to understand it. But when I went through these books, a lot of times I would go through them first and foremost, reading by myself, and then I would, if I found a teacher that was running a class, then I would jump in and join the class with them. And this was something that a lot of times whenever I've gone through some of these books, I would have already read the book for myself, and this makes things, when it comes in class, like I'll give you the example of like if you have a tree, and you're trying to water this tree, and you planted it or whatever, and then like a lot of time has gone and hasn't been watered. That ground around the tree, if you pour water on it, it's just going to go boop. Like that water won't soak into the ground. But if you pour water on that tree and you make sure you have a little berm up there and you've done your work beforehand, you pour water into that tree, the water will sit there and eventually it'll start to soak in. And so, and this is like like maybe that first time that you pour water, it just goes boo, and it goes away. But if you've done that once, and then the next time after it's already had a little bit of water, if you pour more water on it, the soil has already been loosened and it's already been ready to receive that water, and it's not going to repel the water right away. And so this is the same allegory for when someone comes into class. They should have already read the material beforehand and be familiar with the material before it hits them in class, because if when they come into class and they're studying with their teacher, and this is the first time they've ever heard the concept, it's gonna be hard for them. And then when they go back and review it, it'll help them. Of course, like if you already went into the class and you got new material that you've never seen before, go back and make sure you review that, because don't leave that. And reviewing is one of the most important things. And also, as I said before, take it back to the Quran. Whatever you have learned, take it back to the Quran. And so so I'm still talking about Nahu here, but the important thing is when you so after, say, if you take Tankih al-Azhariya, whether you read it or you go through it with a teacher, if you can get a teacher, great. But if you go and you just read it for yourself, this is something that's very, very, very beneficial. And some of the things that he talks about in there, maybe they go over your head. Don't worry about it. Like, this is something over in a while you'll be able to understand it, inshallah, if you keep going at it. And then of course, taking Qatr al-Nada, take this with the teacher, and this is what I did. I took it with the teacher, and at the time I'd already read the Sharh Qatr al-Nada, Ibn Hisham. I read it before. And also a note, when you're reading some of these books, there's going to be hawashi, which hawashi is that extra footnotes at the bottom. When you have all of these footnotes, don't get into them. Like this, like if you think that you're supposed to read all these footnotes, you're going to waste so much time and you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to actually understand what was the author trying to tell you, because you lost the train of thought that he was on because you kept looking down at the footnotes every bit. And so like this is something that I had to like learn, like the footnotes are something you go back to if there's something that's very like strange for you, or when you go back and review the book after you've already read it through and like studied it once, then you can go back and you look at the footnotes and you can get that extra benefit. But the main part that you want to get from the book is you want to get the flow of the author. What is he trying to tell you, and try to get the gist of where he's coming from. And so going through, then after going through Qatr al-Nada, going back to that, I went through it with the teacher, and while I was going through it with the teacher, I had started reading Shudur al-Dhahab. And so like putting these two together at the same time when you're studying is very good. And this is something that that a lot of like the scholars will recommend, doing both of these together. And because Shudur al-Dhahab, it'll give you a lot of things that you won't get in Qatr al-Nada. It'll also give you a lot of like complicated issues that you have to really think about. And there's definitely very, very beautiful things in there. And also, if you have a teacher for this, great. And if you do just want to read some of these books and you feel like you understand most of it, then if you get stuck in an area, then you can go look up online. There's teachers that have done these, and maybe I'll post some links to the teachers that have made that have already like explained these books. But I went through some of them, and I would only take just to save time. If I understood what the book was, then I would actually only go to the playlist of that. I would, if there was an issue that I didn't understand. So say Bab al-Ishtighal or Bab al-Tanazar. Like this was something I came to Bab al-Tanazar, I didn't understand what was going on here. I was like, what's this? And so I actually went and I looked up some of the videos for just this bab. So I went and I found the bab and I listened to it, I understood it, and I was like, okay, now I'll keep moving. And so this is sometimes you don't have to sit through all of the videos if you feel that you understand it. This is something that if you feel that you understand the stuff, then going through it by yourself, as long as you have a teacher that you are working with and that you can go back to and study, then it's not important that you go through every single sharh of every single book that you're going through, or every single sharh of the book that you're studying. This will take a lot of time, and not all of that is necessary for you. The important thing is that you have a teacher that you're following up with, and that is testing you and asking you, like, what is the i'rab of this and what is the i'rab of that. And so all of this, I say this because Nahu is one of the most key things. When you're trying to go into Azhar, you're going to need Nahu. If you don't have Nahu, then you're going to be really stuck. And there was a brother that I went into. There's a brother that I went into the tests for Dirasat Khasa, which, as I said, was like the first thing. And I went into it with him, and he passed that, and that's great. And then there's the next one, which is I'dadi. He didn't pass this I'dadi. So he's stuck in I'dadi for 2 years at least. Or because, one, you're going to have to, if he didn't get into the second year of I'dadi, then he's going to be in the first year. And then he has to finish the first year, and there's no like skipping a year. And then if he comes to the second year, then he can skip the second year. Or like he can skip the third year and take the tests. What I mean by skip is he takes the third year's test after he takes the second year's test. So there's a musabaqa. And if they haven't changed it, I believe it's the same way this way. And then after that, then he goes into Thanawi, which is high school. And then when he goes into Thanawi, then he can take the and then depending on his placements, he would come into the first year, and then he would have to take the first year and the second year. So this is like all in all. After he takes the second year, then he can take the third year test on top of that, just like the other one I talked about. And this is something that if someone didn't make it to Thanawiyah right away, they have to spend 3 years at least in the school system. And this school system isn't like it's not necessarily the best school system, and it's going to take a lot of time. So I had studied what I had studied before I took their tests. I had studied I had talked about Ajrumiyya with the Sharh, Tankih al-Azhariyya, and I also studied Qatr al-Nada with a teacher and by myself before then with Shudur al-Dhahab. And so when I took these, then I came at this point, I came into, I started up with Sharh ibn Aqil, and I got a teacher to go through that with me. But then I ended up the teacher was sometimes he's a very busy teacher, so I ended up going through and reading the whole book beforehand, like before I actually got to it with them. So I've read Sharh ibn Aqil, and I understood most of it. And of course, as I said, don't get too caught up in the Hawashi right away, because this is something that is gonna like those footnotes. They will bog you down, and it's something that you take after you've already gotten the concepts. This is something that adds on the extra things that you should know, and it will give you like extra. Maybe it'll give you differences of opinion and give you extra like little goodies. You know, it's like the icing on the cake. And so after I'd already gone through this, when I took the tests, the Azhari tests, they're actually on, they'll be on like Sharh ibn Aqil. And so like some of the things that, because Sharh ibn Aqil is what the students in Thanawi have been studying. This is like for the Egyptians. They study big portions of Sharh ibn Aqil. So it's the book that they study. So when you study it, you're studying the book that they've studied. And yeah, they take bits and portions and throw it away. You know, this is the nature of the schooling systems these days, is that a lot of times they will take what they think is important, they throw away the rest, and this is its own issue. And so I had already studied this, so when it came back up, I was feeling a lot better. And I want to go also, because I'm talking about Nahu here, and also Sarf is very important for someone that is studying, especially for someone who is like you and I, which speak another language and come into learning Arabic as a new language. This is something that Sarf is much more important for us, because this will give you the key to opening up the language. When you understand Sarf, you'll understand like that these three letters, they come in different forms, and if they come in a certain form, then you will find that this letter holds a certain meaning, and then you learn the meanings come from the forms. And so this is something that you need to be able to differentiate these. When I started learning Sarf, I learned Sarf inside of like my first exposure was the Medina books. So there was a time when Corona came by, all the schools, they got shut down, and so while that time was shut down, I didn't want to shut down myself. So I went and I took the YouTube online Medina course. There's a brother that the Pakistani teacher that teaches this in English. He teaches the whole Medina book set. So I took this, and he speaks very, very slow, and he's very like he talks about things and he gives lots of attention to it. So I sped him up on the YouTube video, and I expect that you guys use that speed button when you feel that you can understand what they're talking about. Then don't waste your time. This is the most important thing for a student of knowledge, is their time. And so I went through all of this in about a month and a half, roughly. It was about a month and a half, maybe it was 2 months, but I finished the whole course of Medina books. And so this gave me, in there's a lot of Sarf. And then also when I got a private teacher after that, I made sure that he went through me and he tested me on different things in Sarf. And so I went through this, and I also went through a book which was like Sarf and Kafi. In this book in particular, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. The taba, like the publication I got, is very bad, and I don't think there's a good one. There's lots of issues in it that were very, very bad. So after that, like there's like Sarf Tatwiki, and then also after that you can go into Shadr al-Arif, and this is these two books are something that is good for a student to go through, especially with a teacher, and he teaches them. And of course, like Sarf is something, when you have it with the teacher and you practice, and then when you read the Quran, of course you practice. When you think about it, okay, what's this form? Okay, whatever I've learned in the Quran, if you open it, like whatever you've learned in Sarf, if you open up the Quran, you start reading Juz Amma, you'll find every single thing you've learned in Sarf on that same page. You know, like this is something that almost every single page of the Quran will solidify whatever you have learned. And so this is very important that someone learns the Quran and they study the Quran with whatever they're learning in Arabic, because of the importance of Arabic. So this is a part of the journey of this. So I went through Shadr al-Arf. After this, I decided that I wanted to study Shadr al-Arf. So I picked it up and I just read it for myself. And this is something that I did first and foremost. And then I picked it up with the teacher. And the teacher that I started learning, I got about a third of the way through. And then the student that I was with wasn't like, he had to go, and his time was as limited. So I had already read through the book, and I read through it like pretty much, not quite all of it twice through, but this is something that I had already studied sarf, so it's something that was very, very beneficial, and some of it I read a lot. And this is something that inshallah I will go through this. And Shadr al-Arf is a more advanced book. And it's something that if somebody really understands it, then at the end of, like, this is something that would be enough for them when they come into Azhar. If they have Shadr al-Arf down and they've studied it, or they studied Sarf al-Tatbiqi, like these two books, if they've studied either one of them, like the Sarf al-Tatbiqi is a little more simple. It doesn't go into as many of the different of things, so this is a good, like, taking little simple steps. So if they go through this and they study this book, and if they get the Shadr of Arf, when they come to this, they will actually be able to answer very well. And in the placement tests, Sarf and Nahu are like the biggest things. Like, and this is also like Sarf will teach you what is the individual words, like what's the meaning of them. And then Nahu will teach you what is the Jumla, like what are the sentence, what is the meaning of the sentence. And then of course there's Balagha as well. And Balagha is something that you would have wanted to take and at least you would have wanted to come to Qatr al-Nada, and it started like with Alfiya before you get into Balagha, because the nature of Balagha is that it's based off of like the ways that the words come together in Jumla and like in sentences. So if you haven't studied these and you start to study Balagha, you'll be super lost and you won't get the benefit. And like when you're studying Nahu, you'll find that, okay, it's permissible to have this in front of this, and this in front of this, and this in front of this. You're like, it's permissible, and it's not permissible. It's permissible. Yajuz, la yajuz. You know, so you'll see this. But when you study Balagha with it, you'll see why is this good and why is this better. You know, why is this and this is something that will teach you it'll give you the real flair to the Arabic language. And it's also something that Balagha is something that someone who's studying fiqh, especially usul al-fiqh, they need to understand Balagha. And this is something that usul al-fiqh, much of usul al-fiqh actually goes into lugha. And like this is something that is all about Arabic. So when someone is studying usul, they need to have a strong understanding of Arabic, such as Nahu, of course. And they also need to have an understanding of Balagha, because a lot of these issues will come up because we're trying to get the subtle meanings of the text. We're trying to get that and bring it out for us. And so this is very important that someone knows. And so these are these things. If you have these basic things, and when you come into Balagha, there's a couple different ways someone can go into it. There's like one of the easiest like books like for a beginner. There's very simple books that are for a beginner. I started with the Durus al-Balagha, and this is the one that I started off. And there's Shuruh, that like there's explanations on YouTube for this, and also there are there's explanation of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, and there's also other explanations out there. And this is something that I took it, and I also took this with a teacher, and this was something that was very beneficial, of course, as a beginning step. So after someone takes the Durus al-Balagha, they can get into the next one, which is like Balaghatul Wadiha. And of course, there's a lot of examples in this book, so some teachers will tell you to do the examples for yourself, and they won't explain all the examples. Sometimes maybe the examples are hard to understand because it's like shared, and this is something, but getting the idea and really getting whatever the concept is down inside of you, this is the important thing. And then after that, there's also another book, which is Jawahir al-Balagha, and this is another book that I personally went into studying Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon with a couple explanations on it, and this was something that I felt like it didn't really explain what I needed to understand. It didn't give me like a sharh. It wasn't an explanation. It was more just like a really like compressed and like concise mutton almost. And so like I went back and I started reading Jawahir al-Balagha, and this is something that's much better. Now, of course, if you have the basis of this, or even just Durus al-Balagha, this is something that would be enough for someone coming into Azhar. And I know I went pretty long on this video, and I don't want to hold too much of your time, but this is something that when you're coming into Azhar, you'll need to have this, as well as there's some other things that you'll need to have, such as like just a good vocabulary. And this is something that you can get from Bani Yadayk. This is like when you go through Bani Yadayk, make sure that you're always looking for new words, and whenever you get a new word, have like a highlighter or something. You highlight the new word. And I had a system that I used, which I would use a certain color asma. For asma, I would have a certain color, like if it's a new like word. And then if it's a fi'l, then I would have a different color for fi'l, because fi'l, I know if it's a fi'l, then there's all kinds of tasrif I can get from it, so it's almost more important. And then if it's like a ism, then I would have its own color, and then I would make the color while I was reading it by myself. I wouldn't necessarily stop to write down and look for a definition. I'd read it all through, and then when I would just put just a little mark with a color on it, with the highlighters. And then when I come back through with the teacher, then I would get that. And also, if you don't have like the colors, then you can always just write something with like a pencil. Just make a little a line under any word that is unknown, and then you can come back to it later. And this is something that, of course, stopping for every word that you don't know is it's definitely a tedious task, and it's going to take so much time that it's better for you to understand 70%. And keep moving than for you to understand 100% and to have spent like 4 extra hours, or 12 extra hours on a book. Like if it's a book, you'll probably spend like extra 12 hours or 14 hours if you're trying to get every single word in that book. And this is something that, of course, there's a principle which I will definitely say that is beneficial, and this is the 70, or it's like the 80-20 principle, which people will talk about in like utilizing your time. And the principle is basically 80% of the work gets done in 20% of the time, and 20% of the work gets done in 80% of the time. And this is, and so like, what does this mean? So like 80% of the work, which if you're going through a certain subject, I'm not trying to learn Arabic, 80% of Arabic can be learned in 20% of the time it takes you to master that subject. And so that first 80% of the work, which is the basic, you're laying the foundation, you get most of that there. This is what takes the smallest, that 20% of the time. Most of the work takes 20% of the time. And then that finalizing, finalizing Arabic and becoming like very strong and whatnot, this is something that will take 80% of the time, which means it'll take so much more time for you to get there. So if you're just good enough, you can keep moving. This is something that's much better for someone to focus on the things that get them just a foundation than to worry about getting that itqan, like at the very beginning, like getting that perfection. Perfection is not the thing that we're looking for. We're looking for something that gives us that foundation, and then from that foundation you can build on it all the time. And this is something that will take a lot of time, and it just takes a lot of patience as well. And also, this is something I really highly recommend someone that is a student, not to worry that if he only like he reads the books and he only understands 65 or 70% of what he read. This is good. In that whole time that he was reading, if he understood like around 70% or 80% even, then he accomplished something, and he was reading and he was utilizing what he previously learned every time he reads. And also another thing I want to recommend as well for students is that they don't get stuck in the Bani Yadayk atmosphere. And what I mean by that is that somebody reads only, they read Bani Yadayk, they go to their lessons with Bani Yadayk, they don't read any books in Nahu, they don't read any books in Sarf, they only take it from Bani Yadayk. This is something that's not the best way to go about it, because there's going to be a lot of words that they don't know that are going to come from other places. And also, I don't recommend that someone spends 2 years learning Arabic and Quran only, because if you're a student of knowledge, then you need to learn much more than Arabic and the Quran. Yes, this is foundational for you to know, but don't let this foundation that is important for you to learn and to perfect, don't let this stop you from learning these other things, such as fiqh. Like if you're in the Shafi'i madhab, learn Abi Suja, go through this, even if you need to go through it in like English environment or whatever, just to get the basic thing. But then you get like a sharh and you start reading it in Arabic. This is going to help you in Arabic, and also like usul fiqh, you're going to want to learn these things, and when you take all of these other sciences, such as maybe you get like the tafsir al-mukhtasar, and you start reading this and you get familiar with it, and you start to learn, and you can take these baby steps, but when you take them from a lot of different angles, that Arabic becomes a part of you. And then when you really use your time wisely and don't get stuck on like Facebook or these or Instagram or these other distractions that happen on social media. This is something, of course, if somebody comes to Egypt to learn, or they come to any like foreign language to learn, they should not be spending their money and time out playing with their friends and going out to eat all the time. And this is not vacation. This is a time for you to study, and this studying is an act of worship. And and so someone should make sure that they take it seriously and that they don't waste their money and their time, which is more important than their money. The reason I say money because like a lot of people's time is based on their money. It's like they can only spend so much time here in Egypt because it's directly coincided with their savings that they allotted. So someone who has a certain amount of savings, if they spend this at McDonald's, like McDonald's is very expensive food here in Egypt. If they spend this, then they're going to waste their time because they're actually wasting the time and hard-earned time that they spent to get that money. They're spending it on there's like food, like this food is like you're in Egypt, like maybe try out some kosher or something. And so this is something that I wanted to talk about, of course, and this is the first steps that someone will need when they get into Azhar. And when someone gets into Azhar, they should. I'll tell you, like my experience. I went to Burke. I got there, and they got me to go into Dirasat al-Khas. So I did fill out paperwork and whatnot, go to Dirasat al-Khasa, and then they'll have a Tahdil al-Mustawa, which is like an exam to see what your level is. I passed this exam. And then I passed the I'dadi exam. The I'dadi exam, it actually has all of the subjects that you would have, like if you were at Islamic school. So you're going to have fiqh, you're going to have hadith, you're going to have tafsir, you're going to have balagha, you're going to have sarf, you're going to have nahu, you're going to have literature. So you need to understand like what comes at you and whatnot. And you're also going to have these other things. So these are things that if you have studied and you had a wide variety of things that you've studied, it won't be hard. So I had already studied like in a wide variety of things for this time before taking that test. So when I did take that test, it was like really good for my recall and it solidified information, as well as that test. Actually, I passed it and I went up to Thanawi and took a test for Tahdid Mustawa and Thanawi, and I got into the second year. And then I was able to take the second year tests and the third year tests at the end of the second year, which I came in right before the end of the year. So I had like crunch time of reading all of their material or like skimming through the stuff that was very easy. And so then I took those tests and then I came into Kulliya, and I probably did it in the fastest way possible that someone could possibly get through the thing. So between like the original applying and getting through all the Tahdil Mustawat and then getting through high school is probably only a year for me. And so this is a lot better. Like my time was much more used, or it was like it wasn't wasted. Like someone, if they weren't to study very well and then they try to get into Azhar, and then when they try to get into Azhar, they get stuck in Daddy, because then how are they going to get up to Thanawi except like with time and patience and going through their classes? And I'm pretty sure the last time that I was in the Earth classes, they actually take attendance, and this is something that of course like a lot of the like college is not like attendance based, but they were actually taking attendance, and this is something that if you don't attend, then there'll be a penalty, or maybe you don't actually graduate. And I would have to check and make sure that that's still the case now. And so, of course, like someone who's in that situation, they can look. But studying beforehand is very, very, very beneficial. So, in review, if you studied up to Sharh ibn Aqil, this is great. And Sarf al-Tatbiqi, or even better is Shadr al-Araf. If you've studied these, as well as Durus al-Balagha or Jawahir al-Balagha, like these, you'll be set. Like as far as loga, as well as you've been reading things in literature and whatnot, you've been exposed to a lot of different words, and you can write, you can read, and you can write properly. Like this is, and you can also speak properly. These are the things. If you have these down, then your logo will be good in all of these things. And also you need to have learned fiqh, which is like Abu Shuja, like you need to have a basic level of fiqh, tafsir, also hadith, mustalah al-hadith, the basic knowledge, knowing what is mursal and what is marfu'. And like in these basic things, you'll need to have known these things in Mustalah al-Hadith, as well as some other things. And inshallah, in another video, I'll talk about what are the things that someone should know in regards to like Aqidah before coming into Azhar, as well as there's other things that are beneficial for people to know as when it comes to like how to study Nahw and Sarf. And I pray that this was a blessing for those of you that were listening, and I apologize if it's a little long, but I hope that this is something that you guys can benefit from. And I've had a lot of questions about this, so I definitely wanted to make a video so I can send it to the people that ask me questions in the future, so that they can be ready before coming into these classes. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير